Mara had never imagined herself working on a ranch. She grew up in a small town, but she had always lived close to paved roads, grocery stores, and quiet neighborhoods. The countryside felt like another world to her, a place she only saw in pictures or on long drives with her parents. But life took a turn she didn't expect. After losing her temporary job and struggling to find a new one, she heard from a friend about a ranch far from town that needed help for the summer. She didn't know anything about ranch life, but she needed money, and she needed something to keep her going. So she packed a small suitcase, wore the only pair of tough boots she owned, and accepted the job. The ranch was huge, much bigger than anything she imagined. It stretched across open fields, rolling hills, and dusty trails. Horses ran freely in fenced areas, cattle grazed lazily under the sun, and wind moved through the tall grass in soft waves. It was beautiful, but also a little overwhelming for someone who was used to quiet streets and short walks. On her first day, she met the rancher, Cole. He wasn't old, maybe in his early 30s, but he carried himself like someone who had worked with his hands all his life. His shoulders were broad, his skin sun-tanned, and his expression serious. He spoke in short sentences, sometimes just one word at a time, and he watched everything with a focused, calm gaze. Mara wasn't sure how to read him. He didn't seem unfriendly, just quiet, almost as though he preferred silence to conversation. For the first week, Mara tried her best to keep up. Ranch work was nothing like she had expected. The days started early, long before the sky even turned blue. The air was cold in the mornings, then hot in the afternoons, and the dust always found a way into her clothes. She learned how to carry feed buckets, clean stalls, and move tools around. Sometimes she tripped over uneven ground or slipped on mud she didn't see. Other times she made small mistakes and felt embarrassed when Cole had to step in and fix them. He never scolded her, but his silent expression made her think she had disappointed him. One afternoon, the sun was strong and bright, and the air felt thick after a morning of light rain. The ground had dried enough to work, but patches of mud still clung to the edges of the fields. Cole asked her to help move some wooden posts near the fence line. They walked together in quiet, the sound of their boots crunching on dry earth. Mara was tired but determined to prove she wasn't useless. She tried lifting a heavier post than she should have. And as she stepped back, her foot sank into a small, wet patch she hadn't seen. She slipped, twisting her ankle just enough to make her gasp. She caught herself before falling but couldn't hide the sudden jolt of pain that shot up her leg. Cole turned immediately, his eyes moving to her feet before she could pretend nothing happened. He had a way of noticing everything without needing to ask. Mara tried to walk normally, but she limped, and it was too obvious to hide. Cole stepped closer, his voice steady as always, but more direct than usual. "Show me your feet," he said. The words froze Mara in place. They hit her so suddenly, spoken in that deep, serious tone of his, that she didn't know how to react. Her face warmed instantly, and she stared at him. Unsure if she heard correctly, Cole looked at her expectantly, not seeming aware of how strange the sentence might sound to someone who didn't understand ranch habits. Mara opened her mouth, closed it again, and stood still like someone who forgot how to breathe. Cole tilted his head slightly, noticing her hesitation but misreading it. "You twisted something," he added. "Let me check." Mara felt her embarrassment grow. Of course, he didn't mean anything strange. He was probably concerned about her injury. But the way he said it, so sudden, so blunt, caught her off guard. She tried to calm herself and nodded slowly, still feeling awkward. She sat on a hay bale near the trail, moving carefully because every pressure on her ankle reminded her of the twist. Cole crouched in front of her, not saying another word, as he reached for her boot. His big hands wrapped around the heel of her shoe, and Mara almost pulled her foot back out of instinct, but she forced herself to stay still. She didn't want him to think she was childish. When Cole lifted her boot slightly, he frowned. The entire bottom was covered in mud, thick and dark, hiding everything beneath it. He scraped some of it off with his gloved thumb, muttering something under his breath about the ground being half trouble and half trap. Mara looked away, trying to slow her breathing. She wasn't used to someone kneeling in front of her or paying such direct attention to her injury. His serious face made everything feel more intense, even though his actions were completely professional. Cole wiped away enough mud to see the shape of her boot, then moved his hand lower, toward her ankle, checking for swelling. The movement surprised her, and she stiffened slightly. Cole noticed but thought she reacted from pain rather than embarrassment. "Does it hurt here?" he asked quietly. "A little," she admitted, though her voice was smaller than she intended. Cole pressed gently, testing different spots along the side of her ankle. He was careful, slower than she expected from someone who spent his days handling heavy tools and strong animals. His patience surprised her. She always thought of ranchers as rough, hurried people. Not the type to kneel in the dirt to make sure someone's ankle was okay. After a moment, Cole leaned back. "It's a mild sprain," he explained. "You need to stay off it for a while. If you push yourself, it'll get worse." Mara nodded again, feeling silly for trying to hide her limp earlier. She looked at Cole, wanting to thank him, but the words wouldn't come out. She wasn't sure why talking felt harder around him. Maybe because he rarely spoke unless necessary. Maybe because he watched her with such quiet intensity. Or maybe because she didn't want him to think she was weak. Cole stood up and offered his hand to help her rise. Mara hesitated only a second before taking it. His grip was steady, strong enough to support her, without making her feel small. When she tried to walk on her own, another sharp pain shot through her ankle, and she winced. "Don't," Cole said simply. "I'll help you back." He stepped beside her and let her lean on him for support. Mara felt her heartbeat quicken. Not from pain, but from the unexpected closeness. Cole didn't seem bothered. He focused only on keeping her steady. They walked slowly across the open field, the sun warm on their backs and the wind brushing against the tall grass. Mara glanced at him out of the corner of her eye. She wanted to say something to apologize for slowing him down, to thank him for helping her, to explain why she looked so flustered when he told her to show her feet, but the words tangled in her throat. Cole walked in silence. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was steady, reliable, the kind of silence that said he didn't mind helping. When they reached the guest house, Mara eased herself onto the porch steps. Cole stood in front of her for a moment, as if making sure she wouldn't try to walk again without help. "Stay put," he said. "I'll bring something for the swelling." Mara nodded, watching him walk away with steady steps. She let out a long breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her ankle hurt, yes, but her heart was beating for an entirely different reason. She had come to the ranch for work. She didn't expect misunderstandings. She didn't expect kindness. And she certainly didn't expect a quiet rancher to make her feel so seen. Even when he barely spoke, Mara woke up the next morning with a heaviness in her ankle and an even heavier feeling in her chest. She didn't want to be a burden to anyone, especially on a ranch where everyone worked hard from sunrise to sunset. When she tried to stretch her leg, a small ache pulsed through her foot, reminding her of yesterday's mistake. She sighed and sat up slowly, letting the early morning light fall across her room in soft gold lines. She remembered how Cole had helped her walk back, how close he had been, and how quietly attentive he was. It felt strange to think about it now. He wasn't the kind of man who showed emotion easily, so every small expression or gesture from him stood out. She couldn't forget the moment when he had told her to show her feet in that serious tone of his. The memory made her cheeks warm even now, even though she knew he meant nothing odd by it. Mara decided she needed to act normal when she saw him. She didn't want him to think she was fragile or overly dramatic. She carefully put on her boots, even though the pressure around her ankle hurt. When she stepped outside, she found the air fresh and cool, the ground still damp from the morning dew. She took a few slow steps, trying not to limp, but her foot protested with each movement. Before she could take her fourth step, the front door of the main house opened. Cole walked out, holding 2 mugs of coffee, steam rising from them. He stopped when he saw her standing awkwardly on the porch. "You shouldn't be walking yet," he said, his voice firm, but not unkind. Mara straightened, pretending to be fine. "I'm okay," It's just a little stiff. Cole raised an eyebrow. The closest thing she had ever seen to him. Doubting someone openly. You can barely put weight on it. She wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her. When she tried to take another step, she stumbled slightly. Catching herself on the railing, Cole sighed, shook his head gently, and set one mug down before walking over to her. I told you yesterday, he said calmly, you need rest. Ranch work will still be here tomorrow. Mara felt embarrassed again. She hated the idea of slowing down work for others. I don't want to cause trouble, she murmured. You're not, Cole said, handing her the coffee. Trouble is letting it get worse. Then I'd really have a problem. His simple honesty made her feel strangely relieved. He wasn't annoyed with her. He wasn't disappointed. He just wanted her to heal properly. With slow steps, he guided her to sit on the porch bench. After she settled, he crouched beside her again, just like yesterday, and asked her if the pain was the same or worse. Mara's heart thumped loudly when he knelt down. She hoped he didn't hear it. It's a little worse this morning, she admitted. Because you didn't rest, he answered plainly. His straightforwardness made her smile despite the situation. She always overthought things, while he spoke simply and clearly without adding any complicated feelings to the words. But maybe that was the charm of people like Cole. They meant exactly what they said. He gently loosened her boot at the top so the pressure wouldn't make the swelling grow. His hands moved slowly, carefully, showing a quiet skill that came from years of practice dealing with animals, tools, and injuries of all kinds. He didn't touch her ankle directly this time, but he still examined it visually, nodding to himself as if thinking through what needed to be done. You'll stay off it today, he said. I'll handle the fence posts myself. Mara looked up sharply. No, I can help with something else, maybe something that doesn't require walking. There isn't much that doesn't require walking on a ranch, Cole replied, standing up. But you can help later. Right now, you rest. His voice wasn't stern, but it had the weight of someone who expected to be listened to. Mara knew arguing wouldn't change his mind. She sighed but nodded, and Cole gave a small, approving glance before turning to head toward the stables. After he left, Mara sipped the coffee he handed her. It was warm, strong, and comforting. She wondered if he always made coffee for the ranch hands, or if this morning was different because of her injury. She didn't want to assume anything, so she pushed the thought away. The morning passed slowly. Mara sat on the porch, watching horses trot across the field and birds flutter between the fences. She hated being still, but she tried to tell herself it was only for a day. Every so often, she saw Cole in the distance, working quietly on the posts they were supposed to fix together. He worked with steady strength, lifting heavy beams like they weighed nothing. Mara felt guilty watching him do it alone. By noon, Cole returned to check on her. His shirt was dusty, and his hair was damp with sweat, but he looked relaxed rather than overwhelmed. He set down a plate of food he had brought from the main house, simple bread, fruit, and leftover stew. You didn't have to bring me lunch, Mara said softly. You can't walk to the kitchen, he reminded her. She felt the warmth rise to her face again. I could have tried. Exactly why I brought it, he said. So you wouldn't. Mara laughed lightly, and Cole's expression softened for a brief second. He didn't smile much, but when he did, even a little, it felt meaningful. They talked while she ate. Cole wasn't a big talker, but he answered her questions. She learned he had been running the ranch alone since his father passed away a few years ago. She also learned that he wasn't used to having extra help, which explained why he preferred silence over conversation. Mara told him about losing her job in town and why she needed this opportunity. Cole listened quietly, his attention steady, never rushing her. When she finished eating, Cole stood and said he had more work to do but would check on her again later. Before he walked away, Mara thanked him sincerely. He paused for a moment, then nodded without looking directly at her, almost as if he didn't know how to respond to gratitude. As the day stretched on, Mara rested as instructed. She tried not to let her mind wander to awkward moments or yesterday's misunderstanding. But the memory still lingered. She thought about the way Cole's voice sounded when he said those unexpected words, how embarrassed she felt, and how he didn't seem to notice at all. To him, it was a simple, practical request. To her, it had felt personal, for a moment she couldn't explain. In the late afternoon, Cole returned again with a small bag of ice wrapped in a cloth. He placed it gently beside her ankle and told her to keep it there for 15 minutes. Mara thanked him again, and this time, he gave a small, "You're welcome," that sounded almost shy. As he was about to leave, Mara called out softly, "Hey, about yesterday." He stopped and looked back at her, waiting. She felt her heart thump nervously but forced herself to continue. "I acted strange when you said to show my feet. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just tired and surprised." Cole blinked once, then said in his calm tone, "You were hurt. Anyone would react." She stared at him, stunned by how easily he dismissed her embarrassment. He wasn't thinking about the awkwardness at all. He wasn't judging her. To him, it really had been nothing more than checking an injury. Mara felt something ease inside her, a gentle comfort she didn't expect. Cole nodded once more and walked off toward the barn, leaving Mara with the quiet realization that maybe she had misunderstood more than just his words. Maybe she had misunderstood him. The rest of the evening passed peacefully. Mara's ankle still hurt, but her heart felt lighter. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. Cole cared, even if he didn't say much. His actions were steady, thoughtful, and real. And for the first time since arriving at the ranch, Mara didn't feel like an outsider. The next morning arrived with a soft orange light stretching across the ranch, painting everything in warm colors. Mara woke up feeling slightly better, though her ankles still felt heavy and stiff. She sat up slowly, testing her foot by moving it in small circles. It still hurt, but not as sharply as before. Maybe resting yesterday really did help. Still, she knew she wasn't ready to walk normally. She glanced at the window and wondered what Cole was doing. He usually started his day before sunrise, feeding the animals, checking the fences, and preparing tools for the day's work. Mara felt a strange mix of guilt and appreciation. Guilt because she wasn't helping, and appreciation because he had taken care of things without complaining. She didn't know many people who would handle extra work so quietly, especially for someone they barely knew. When she stepped outside carefully, leaning on the porch railing for balance, she found Cole already there. He was pouring feed into a bucket for the horses. He looked up when he heard the door open, and for a moment, he paused as if checking whether she should even be standing. "You're awake?" he said simply. Mara smiled. "Yeah, my ankle feels a little better today." Cole set down the bucket and walked over, stopping a few feet in front of her. "Can you walk at all without hurting?" "I can walk a little," she said, though she didn't sound confident. "Show me," he said quietly. She took one careful step and stopped when the familiar ache returned. Cole watched closely, not judging her, only paying attention. His expressions were always subtle, but she could tell when he was worried by the way his eyebrows pulled together slightly. "That's enough," he said. "You're not ready yet." Mara sighed, frustrated with herself. "I feel useless." "You're not," Cole replied immediately. "You're injured. That happens." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Cole rarely used emotional words, so when he did, it felt meaningful. Mara relaxed a little, letting herself accept his calm logic. Cole stepped onto the porch and stood beside her, not too close, just near enough to be supportive. "I need to check a few things on the far field today. I'll be back around noon. Stay here. Keep resting. And don't try to walk more than necessary." She nodded, and he gave one last look before heading off toward the fields with steady strides. For a while, Mara simply sat on the porch, listening to the breeze move through the grass and the distant calls of animals. It was peaceful, almost too quiet, and she found herself thinking again about the moments when Cole had helped her. His silence had once made her nervous, but now she saw something soft behind it, something steady and honest. By mid-morning, Mara decided she couldn't just sit and wait for the day to pass. She wanted to help somehow, even if she couldn't lift heavy things or walk across the whole field. She spotted a pile of tools near the shed: ropes, gloves, brushes, and a few smaller items that needed cleaning. None of them required heavy moving or long walking. She carefully made her way down the steps, holding the railing tightly, and reached the shed by taking small, measured steps. Once inside, she found a stool and sat, placing the tools on a barrel in front of her. She began wiping dust off the handles and sorting items into neat stacks. It wasn't much, but it felt good to be useful. Working with her hands distracted her from the throbbing in her ankle and the lingering awkwardness she still felt from earlier misunderstandings. As she worked, she heard footsteps outside. She glanced up and saw Cole approaching from the far side of the barn. He must have returned earlier than expected. When he stepped inside and saw her cleaning the tools, he stopped and stared for a second. Not angry, just confused. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Helping," she said with a small smile. "At least, helping in a way that doesn't require walking much." Cole looked at the tools, then at her ankle, then back at her. "You walked out here?" "Slowly," she admitted. "Very slowly." Cole sighed, the kind of sigh someone gives when they care but don't know how to express it without sounding strict. He crouched down beside her, lowering his voice. "You shouldn't be moving around yet. I can't just sit all day and watch everyone work," she replied gently. "I want to be useful." "You are useful," he said quietly. "Even when you're sitting." "Aye." The words made her chest warm. She wasn't expecting him to say anything like that. It was simple, but it carried more weight than anything else he had said to her so far. Cole sat on an overturned bucket across from her. For a moment, they just sat in the dusty shed, breathing in the scent of hay and old wood. Cole picked up one of the ropes she had cleaned and examined it. "You did a good job with this," he said. Mara smiled. "Thank you. I used to help my dad clean tools sometimes. Not ranch tools, though." Cole nodded, still looking at the rope. "Work is work. Cleaning is cleaning. Doesn't matter what tools they are." They fell into easy conversation, which surprised Mara. Cole didn't seem like someone who would talk much, especially not about himself. But today, he was calmer, more open. Maybe he felt comfortable around her now. Or maybe he just appreciated that she was trying. Even while injured, he told her about growing up on the ranch, how his father had taught him everything he knew. He shared memories of fixing fences in storms, rescuing animals in the middle of the night, and waking up before dawn to help during calving season. His stories were simple but filled with a quiet pride. Mara listened closely, fascinated by a world so different from her own. She told him a little about her town job, how she used to work in a small office, filing papers and answering calls. It was nothing compared to ranch life, but it had been stable, familiar. Losing it had shaken her. Cole didn't laugh or judge. Instead, he listened with the same calm focus he had when checking her ankle. After a while, Cole stood up. "Your ankle needs a break again," he said. "Let's get you back to the porch." "I can walk," she insisted. "Maybe you can," he said, "but you shouldn't." He stepped close enough for her to lean on him without feeling like she was too heavy or too much trouble. Mara rested her hand lightly on his arm, and he supported her carefully as they made their way back. His steady presence made her feel safe, even though she barely knew him. When they reached the porch, he helped her sit and brought another ice pack from the kitchen. He placed it gently over her ankle, making sure it didn't press too hard. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole shrugged lightly. "You'd do the same for someone else." She looked at him, wondering how he could be so sure. "Maybe," she said softly. "But not everyone would do it as patiently as you." For the first time since she met him, Cole looked slightly flustered, not embarrassed, just unsure of how to react. His eyes moved away for a moment, and he cleared his throat. "You should rest for the next hour," he said quietly. "I'll check on you again soon." As he walked away, Mara watched him with new eyes. She had seen his strength before, but now she saw his kindness, his patience, and the careful way he tried to take care of things without making a big deal out of it. Her ankle was healing slowly, but something else was changing even faster. She was beginning to understand the rancher behind the silence. And she wasn't afraid of that anymore. The evening settled gently over the ranch, filling the sky with soft colors that slowly shifted from gold to pink and then to a quiet blue. Mara sat on the porch with her ankle resting on a cushion Cole had set for her earlier. She watched the sun drop behind the fields, feeling a calm she hadn't felt in a long time. Even though she was injured and far from home, something about this place made her feel grounded. Maybe it was the peaceful land. Maybe it was the slow rhythm of ranch life. Or maybe it was Cole, quiet, steady, and surprising in ways she never expected. She thought a lot about the moment he had told her to show her feet. The memory still made her blush. But now she found herself smiling at it instead of wanting to hide. It had been an awkward misunderstanding, one that made her feel flustered for hours. Yet somehow it helped her see a different side of him. He wasn't distant. He was simply focused. He wasn't cold. He was careful. He didn't talk much, but everything he did showed thoughtfulness. As the last bit of daylight faded, Mara heard footsteps on the wooden porch. She looked up and saw Cole walking toward her with a small ice pack wrapped in a towel. His shirt was dusty from work, and there was a faint scratch on his arm, probably from tangled wire or a rough tool, but he didn't show any tiredness on his face, just his usual calm, unreadable expression. "I forgot to bring this earlier," he said. "You didn't forget," Mara replied gently. "You've already brought me two today." Cole paused, then nodded slightly as if accepting her point. He handed her the ice pack, and she placed it against her ankle with a quiet breath. The cold eased, the dull ache almost immediately. "You should keep that on for a little while," Cole said. "Helps with swelling." "I will," she assured him. For a moment, he stood there, watching her ankle, making sure the ice rested properly. Then he stepped back, as if giving her space. Mara studied him quietly. She noticed now that he always kept a polite distance unless he needed to help her physically. It was his way of being respectful, even if he didn't say it out loud. "Your day was long," Mara said softly. "You didn't have to check on me so much." Cole shrugged in that simple way he did. "You're hurt. That makes it my responsibility to check." "You make it sound like checking on me is part of fence repair," she teased. He actually smiled, just a small curve of the lips, but enough to make her heartbeat skip. "Everything's part of ranch work one way or another," he said. Mara couldn't help but smile back. "Even taking care of stubborn ranch helpers?" "Especially them," he answered quietly. Their eyes met for a moment longer than either expected. Mara felt warmth spread through her chest. Cole cleared his throat and turned slightly, glancing at the fields instead of her face. It was clear he wasn't used to lingering moments or emotional closeness. It made her like him even more. "Trying to ease the tension," Mara said. "I've been thinking about how silly I acted that day when you told me to show my feet." Cole looked back at her, one brow raised as if he didn't see the point of bringing it up. "I mean," she continued, feeling her cheeks warm, "I froze like a scared rabbit." "You were surprised," he said simply. "I was ridiculous," she insisted, though she was smiling now. "I should have realized you just wanted to check my ankle." Cole shook his head. "You were hurt. People react strangely when they're hurt or tired. Doesn't mean anything. But I felt embarrassed the whole day," she admitted. Cole's eyes softened, just barely, but enough for her to notice. "You shouldn't have." "I wasn't thinking about anything except the injury." "I know," Mara said. "That's what makes it funny now." Cole opened his mouth as if he wanted to say more, but then closed it again. He walked over to the railing and leaned on it, looking out at the pasture. Mara watched him quietly, admiring the way the evening light made his figure look strong and calm against the fading sky. After a moment, he said, "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," she replied gently. "I made myself uncomfortable." Cole didn't respond right away. He seemed to think carefully before speaking. "I don't usually work with people. Not closely, I mean. I forget how things sound sometimes." Mara felt surprised. She had always seen him as someone who understood everything clearly. But hearing him say this made him human. Real. Imperfect. Thoughtful. "You're doing fine," she said softly. "Actually, better than fine." He glanced at her with a puzzled expression. "How?" Because you've taken care of me more than anyone else has in a long time, she said honestly. You brought me ice packs, food, checked on me, carried me back to the porch. That means something. Cole looked away at the fields again, and she noticed the tips of his ears turn slightly pink under the soft evening light. He didn't know how to respond to praise. He never expected it. He probably never received much of it either. After a long pause, he said quietly, I didn't want you to feel alone out here. Mara's breath caught for a moment. She wasn't expecting that kind of honesty from him. Not in words. Not from someone who spoke so little. That's kind of you, she whispered. He nodded once, as if uncomfortable with how personal the conversation felt. Mara didn't push further. She respected his quiet boundaries. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Cole straightened, brushing dust off his hands. I made dinner, he said awkwardly, not looking at her directly. It's nothing fancy. But if you want, I can bring you a plate. Mara blinked in surprise. You cooked? He nodded. I cook most nights. Ranch hands come and go, so someone has to do it. The idea of Cole standing in the kitchen preparing food made Mara smile warmly. I'd love a plate. Cole nodded once and walked toward the house. His movements were quick and slightly stiff, as if he wasn't sure whether he should walk normally or hurry to avoid awkwardness. When he returned with a full plate steamed vegetables, chicken, and warm bread, Mara felt a wave of appreciation. He hadn't just made food. He had taken time to arrange it neatly, placing everything in a way that looked almost careful. This looks amazing, she said. It's just food, Cole replied. It's more than that, she insisted. It's thoughtful. Again, Cole seemed unsure how to respond, so he simply nodded and sat on the porch railing nearby. Not too close but not far either. They talked slowly while she ate. Nothing forced, nothing heavy. Cole told her about how he learned to cook when he was young because his father believed a rancher should know how to do every job on his land. Mara told him about helping her mother bake during weekends. Their stories blended into a gentle rhythm. After she finished eating, Cole took the plate back inside, then returned and sat beside her, not touching but close enough for their shoulders to feel the warmth of each other's presence. The sky had grown dark, and stars began to appear above them. The ranch lights glowed softly around the barns. Mara broke the silence with a soft laugh. I'll never forget the day a rancher told me to show my feet. I'll. Cole shook his head slowly, and though he didn't laugh, his eyes held a quiet amusement. And I'll never forget how confused you looked. They shared a peaceful silence, the kind that comes only when two people finally understand each other. For the first time, Mara didn't feel embarrassed anymore. The next few days passed quietly, and Mara's ankle slowly improved. She could place more weight on it now, though she still walked carefully, making sure not to push herself too hard. Cole kept checking on her, just as he did before. But now their interactions felt easier, lighter, almost familiar. She no longer felt that nervous twist in her stomach when he spoke, nor did she freeze at his blunt words. She understood him better. And because of that, every moment felt different. By the fourth morning, Mara woke up to the sound of soft knocking on her door. When she opened it, Cole stood outside with his usual calm expression. He held 2 mugs of warm tea instead of coffee today. The steam rose into the cool morning air. You're walking better, he said after she stepped onto the porch. A little, she replied. Still slow. Slow is fine, he said. You're healing. She took the mug from him, feeling the warmth spread through her hands. They stood on the porch together, looking out at the early morning light, brushing over the fields. Mara breathed in the crisp air and felt a sense of peace she hadn't realized she needed. Cole, she said after a moment. Thank you for everything. He looked at her sideways, not fully turning his head. For what? For taking care of me. For being patient. For not making me feel like a burden. She laughed softly. Honestly, I don't think I could have survived the first week here without your help. Cole stared ahead again, his expression thoughtful. I didn't do anything special. You did, she said quietly. He didn't answer, but she could tell her words had reached him. He wasn't the type to react openly, but his silence had a softness to it now, different from the silence he used at the beginning, a silence that felt like understanding. After they finished their tea, Mara tried walking a little farther. Cole walked beside her, not touching her but staying close enough to support her if she stumbled. She didn't stumble this time, though the ache in her ankle reminded her that she still had limits. When they reached the small barn, which was closer than the fields, Cole stopped and turned toward her. "You can start helping again," he said, "but only with light things. No lifting, no walking long distances." Mara nodded eagerly. "I can do that." He gave her a small approving nod before heading off to check the fences again. Mara stayed in the barn, organizing small tools and brushing dust off equipment that had been left unused for a while. It wasn't hard work, but it made her feel useful again, and she was grateful for that. Throughout the day, Cole passed by the barn multiple times, glancing inside to make sure she was okay. Each time, Mara smiled at him, and each time he gave a simple nod before continuing his tasks. Their quiet routine felt natural now. By afternoon, the sun had warmed the air enough to make everything shimmer slightly. Mara stepped outside for a breath of fresh air and saw Cole walking back from the far fence with long, steady strides. She watched him approach, feeling a small tug of admiration. He worked hard every single day, never complaining, never rushing, always steady. When he reached her, he looked at her ankle first before looking at her face. "How does it feel?" "A lot better," she answered. "Almost normal." He didn't smile, but his eyes showed relief. "Good." She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Does this mean I can start helping with the bigger tasks tomorrow?" "We'll see how you feel in the morning," he said. No rushing. It was such a simple instruction, but the care behind it made her chest warm. She nodded again, and they walked back toward the porch together. Later in the evening, after dinner, Mara sat on the porch steps. The sky glowed a deep orange, and the ranch lights flickered on one by one in the distance. Cole returned from putting away tools and sat on the railing near her, just like he had the night before. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The quiet between them felt comfortable, warm in its own way. Then Mara broke the silence with a gentle laugh. "Do you know something?" Cole glanced at her. "What?" "I think I'll always remember this summer as the time I learned how to stand properly on uneven ground." He raised an eyebrow. "You mean the time you slipped in the mud and twisted your ankle?" "That too," she admitted with a smile. "But mostly, the part where someone kept helping me even when I felt embarrassed or useless." Cole looked at her fully this time, his expression serious but not cold. "You were never useless." The words made her blink. She hadn't expected such a direct response. "You worked hard," he continued. "You tried even when you were tired. You listened. You cared. That matters more than walking fast or carrying heavy things." Mara felt her throat tighten slightly, not with sadness, but with emotion she wasn't sure how to name. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. "Thank you," she said softly. Cole nodded once, and then, as if wanting to lighten the mood, he added, "Besides, not everyone reacts the way you did when I asked them to show their feet." Mara covered her face with both hands and groaned playfully. "Please don't bring that up again." "I won't," he said, but she could hear the hint of amusement in his voice. It made her laugh, and the sound carried softly across the porch. When she lowered her hands, Cole was looking at her with a calm, steady expression, an expression she had grown comfortable with. "You're healed enough now," he said gently. "You won't need me checking on your feet anymore." Mara smiled. "I guess not." There was a short pause before she added teasingly, "But you'll still check on me, right? Just not my feet." Cole's eyes softened, almost like he wanted to smile but didn't let himself fully. "I'll check on you," he said quietly. "But not because of your ankle." She felt her heart flutter at the honesty in his words. The sun dipped completely below the hills, leaving the ranch in a blanket of soft twilight. The air grew cooler, and fireflies began blinking near the grass. Mara hugged her knees gently as she looked out across the peaceful land. "I used to think I wouldn't fit in here," she said softly. "Everything felt too difficult, too unfamiliar, too quiet." "And now?" Cole asked. "Now," She paused, choosing her words carefully. Now I feel like I understand this place. Like it's not just a ranch. It's a home someone built with a lot of effort. A home someone takes care of, even when no one notices. Cole didn't move, but she sensed something change in his expression, something deeper, something that made her realize how much the ranch meant to him. You notice, he said quietly. I do, she replied. They sat together a little longer, letting the quiet of the night settle around them. The crickets began their steady song, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh hay. Finally, Cole stood up and said, Come on, time to rest. Mara nodded and used the railing to stand, carefully testing her ankle. It felt almost normal now. When she steadied herself, Cole held the door open for her. It was a small gesture, but like everything he did, it felt sincere. As she stepped inside, she looked back at him and said, Thank you, Cole. For everything. He studied her for a moment, then replied in his simple, honest way, I'm glad you're here, Mara. It was the kind of sentence that stayed with her long after she closed the door. And as she lay in bed that night, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch settling into sleep, she realized something important. She hadn't just healed her ankle. She had found a place where she felt understood. A place where even a quiet rancher could surprise her. A place that felt, unexpectedly, like home.